I played a lot of boss-centered games like Dark Souls, Cuphead and lots of Souls-like games. So today I wanna talk about the top 10 bosses I faced so far. Number 10. Dr. Kahls Robot. This was my favorite fight in Cuphead, even though I saw lots of people hate on him. I think I like it because the phase 1 is genius. When you destroy his weapons, they alter into different ones, and this introduces a strategic element. This is really cool and probably the most difficult part of the fight. After destroying his weapons, he reveals his heart for lots of damage. Once you defeated this phase, his head will fly around in the arena and death rockets are chasing you. This phase I like less, but it's really short. In the last phase, the doctor comes back and unleashes a bullet hell on you. This is really fun as a last phase and fits the theme. This is also the hardest boss on Cuphead, but the first phase makes it interesting enough to not get boring. Number 9. Nameless Pupet. Nameless Pupet is the final boss of Lies of P, and only available after not allowing Geppetto to take your heart. The encounter feels really smooth and makes the best out of the combat system by fast-paced and delayed attacks. The presentation is also really sick. He has 2 health bars and in the second phase the fight only really starts. He buffs his weapons and can either use one sword or combine them to 2 for powerful attacks. He has such a diverse moveset with lots of moves spread over 2 phases, and Geppetto talking in the back also makes me enjoy this fight even more. Number 9. Soul of Cinder. Soul of Cinder is the conclusion to the main game of Dark Souls 3, and a good one at that. In phase 1 he switches his arsenal of attacks from a greatsword to a cursed sword to magic and to spear. And this is in a random combination to resemble the builds of the DS1 players. This phase is fun and really diverse. I especially like the greatsword moveset, and I don't wanna forget the armor he wears. If I could rock that in public, I would. After depleting his first health bar, he slams his sword in the ground and now has a completely new moveset, taking parts of it from Gwyn. He has lightning he shoots in the air and a grab, consistent of a sword combo which can one-shot me if I don't avoid it properly. The music is also really good, bringing back the pling plong sound, and it's in general a really cinematic fight with an immense amount of moves, probably the most I ever fought. It's just a standard knight versus knight duel with no gimmicks and rewarding good gameplay with the completion of one of my favorite games. Number 7. Judge Cleric from Lords of the Fallen. Lords of the Fallen had a couple great bosses like the Lightsaber and Tancred, but I decided for the Judge Cleric because it's a cool fight with good mechanics. I really like how she adds more and more complexity to her movesets by adding holy projectiles, and she leaves holy spikes on the ground as the fight goes on, which do really low damage but force you to pay attention to your positioning and directions of rolls. She has 2 health bars, which makes the fight more challenging, and in the second one she goes from holy to fire attacks, and has some attacks where she jumps around and does fire AoEs. I really liked how she gets progressively harder and harder, ramping up the difficulty, and her attacks are just fun to dodge, and not too difficult with the generous amount of iframes you get in Lords of the Fallen. But it was generally just a fight with good visuals, combat mechanics and high lore significance. I understand how lots of people wouldn't put her in their top 10, but I just wanted one Lords of the Fallen boss in it cause I really like the boss roster. Number 6. Isshin the Sword Saint from Sekiro. Isshin is such a good finale to a great game. It's a 4-phase fight, but the first fight is just Genichiro again. But after you defeat him, he summons Isshin, and this fight is no pushover. He has lots of attacks and barely lets you heal and deals immense amount of damage. In phase 1 you have to play aggressive and it won't be too hard, cause you can get him to do a Mikiri counter or a stomp slash a lot, which you can counter for high posture damage. In phase 2 he pulls out the spear, which makes his range and damage and combo variations brutal, and even if you think you are out of range he can just pull out the Glock and shoot you down. The last phase is pretty much the same, except for some new special attacks. But he also adds lightning, which can be reflected and makes this phase easier than the second one. But it's still really cinematic, and Isshin has some elegance to him, cause he's the swordmaster you encounter throughout the game. Number 5. Radiance. Radiance is the final boss of the true ending in Hollow Knight. It's sort of a boss gauntlet, cause you have to face the Hollow Knight first, which is a rather easy boss, and most people won't struggle with him at this point. But the Radiance is way more difficult. You first have to challenge her before you can fight her. She is different to other Hollow Knight bosses, cause most of her attacks are things she summons, and I think she is really difficult, cause it's technically a 5-phase boss fight, which gets progressively harder, especially when the arena turns into platforms and you have to dodge and position yourself to hit her. All of her attacks require good decision making and positioning, and fast reaction, except for the last phase where you just jump up the platforms until you reach her and the fight is finished. It's not that difficult, but your adrenaline will be so high it doesn't really matter. I also think the design and the lore is great with all the light and stuff. It makes this fight really feel like a final encounter. I haven't fought Absolute Radiance and Poor Vessel yet, and my opinion might change once I fight these. Number 4. Messmer the Impaler from Elden Ring. Messmer was the ad material for Shadow of the Erdtree, and by that I mean he was on every poster and trailer where Shadow of the Erdtree was. But he delivered, his fight is one of the most fun ones. He is so cinematic and his 2 cutscenes are the best in the game. The fight also is able to present the character of Messmer without any background knowledge of the player. His main combo, Messmer's Assault, is so fun to dodge and all the attacks are flashy and leave fair openings. Once you reach half health, a cutscene will play and he will have new serpent attacks. This phase is a bit worse, but the presentation is better with all the snakes and stuff. All this makes him one of my favorite fights, with the only negative being that he's a bit easy on replay playthroughs. Number 3. Slave Knight Gael from Dark Souls 3. Gael is the last boss of the final DLC of the Dark Souls trilogy. You and him are the last 2 people standing, and you're fighting over the Dark Soul. The arena is just phenomenal, and the 3-phase fight shows how Gael gets his mind back. In phase 1 he's wild like a beast, driven wild by the souls he absorbed. And in phase 2 he stands up, with the cool midway cutscene where he says the famous lines,
"Is this the blood? The blood of the Dark Soul?"
And in phase 3 he goes crazy, with lightning covering the arena and souls he consumed spawning after every attack. The phase just feels so cool and it's cinematic. The gameplay is brilliant and you feel like the most badass guy in the world after avoiding some of his jump into crossbow into double jump combos. All this makes him the best possible end to one of the best trilogies in fiction. Number 2. Promised Consort Rhadan from Shadow of the Erdtree. Rhadan is the final boss of the Shadow of the Erdtree, and in some sense with that he's the final boss of Elden Ring. He is a bit controversial, but I really liked his challenging moveset. He is definitely the hardest boss I ever faced. I needed more than 10 hours to beat him on my first playthrough, and lost control on how many deaths I had. Since then I replayed him a couple times, but I just can't manage to nail phase 2. Phase 1 is relatively easy and fun to fight, but the difficulty comes from phase 2. This annoying fanboy named Mikola crawls on his back and gives lingering AoEs to his slashes. He also gains many new moves where you have no clue what's going on. It's so fast paced and the damage is insane. I tried no hitting him, but I wasn't able to survive longer than 30 seconds in phase 2. I always got hit by some light beams or his double slash and meteorite attack. He's mainly in second place because of the feeling when I was able to beat him the first time. It was better than any other. This once insurmountable challenge was finally beaten after hours and hours of attempts. And this is the exact reason why I play these types of games. Number 1. Tate Eboshi from Nioh 2. This is in my opinion the perfect fight. She is difficult but not frustrating. She deals so much damage, but if you learn her attacks it's doable. This all just gets turned up by the combat system of Nioh 2, which is phenomenal, and she fits perfectly in it. She chains her combos together in a way which is fair and challenging. I replayed this mission now a couple times. The first time I used yokai shift and yokai abilities, then just abilities, and finally nothing but my sword. And after beating this boss over 4 times, it still remains challenging and fun to fight. She also forces you to do stance switching, because her side combos are so fast that high stance rolls are too slow, and for the rest of the moveset these are better. There is honestly nothing I don't like about this fight. It's phenomenal and manages to stand out in a game with so many bosses. Nioh 2 has in general one of the best boss rosters in gaming. I like almost all of the over 40 bosses. Some human bosses are kinda annoying, but the rest is great. All of her moves have clear tells, and if you mess up you know what you did wrong. And the visuals fit so well. She is the second last boss for the last DLC, and really helps to build up the tension to the final encounter. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe, and a comment if you have any recommendations for another video.